Hi, thanks for joining me today. Do you find you're the recipient of some extremely poor and damaging behaviours and attitudes in your step family? Subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, and I'll let you know every time I post. One of the things that's unique to step parenting, but not quite unique, but what happens in a step family that doesn't happen in other family types, is projection. Projection in step families is very, very common. And by projection, I mean that people inside the family, whether that be the children, the parents, your partner's ex, the extended family, can project the difficult, uncomfortable feelings they feel about the situation the family was in and has gone through. So perhaps a divorce or a separation or some kind of difficulty leads to people feeling as though they've got stuff that they feel very angry about or sad about or fearful about. And when you're having to cope with those feelings inside you, one of the ways to get rid of them is to project them onto somebody else. So you sort of get rid of them by blaming somebody or not being nice to them or belittling them or calling them names or getting really angry with them, being quite irrational, kind of like it isn't your fault that you're feeling upset or angry, so you push that out of you and blame somebody else. So it's somebody else's fault that something that this is the way it is. And the thing about this is that in a step family, the person that is the receiver of those projected difficult emotions is very often and very unfairly the step parent. Why? Because you're often the newcomer. There's little risk in projecting onto you, because if they can get rid of you and you're no longer part of their lives, then all to the good. You're kind of an easy receptacle for all of this blame and hurt and sadness and fear. And you're an easy receptacle for it because you're, in their opinion, somewhere in their back of their heads, surplus to requirements. So you're sort of fair game. You're exposed, if you like. So let's just take this from the step parent's perspective, because then you are finding yourself the recipient of some quite vile behaviours sometimes. Rudeness, isolation, ignoring you, ghosting you, refusing to cooperate, refusing to do anything you suggest or do or want, just blocking. And then there's kind of downright saying, well, I'm not going to come unless my step-parent doesn't, if my step-parent's there. So, you have to be somewhere else so that their parent can see their child. Or quite sort of really kind of difficult demands and objectionable behaviours bordering on violence, kind of like stealing from you, dissing everything that you say, countering everything you say, arguing, disrespecting your property, messing the house up, all of these kinds of behaviours. And when I say all, you've got to differentiate between a child or somebody's just ignorance or overlooking something and not doing it on purpose and doing something by mistake, to being the kind of projected behaviour. But we as step-parents are often the receptacle of the projected emotions from everybody else in the step family. So how do you cope as a step-parent with this projected behaviour, which is extremely unpleasant? Well, first of all, it's very difficult to cope with because it sideswipes you all the time. It comes out of the blue, unexpectedly, from places you wouldn't expect. You can be quite happily doing something and then you get completely sideswiped by something that happens. It's a projection. Or it's something that's repeated time and time again and you're the recipient of this poor behaviour or poor language or these poor emotions. Well, the first step as a step-parent in this is to acknowledge that what you're doing is really difficult and that sometimes you'll cope better than others. Secondly, is to realise that this is what it is. It's not about you, and it's not because you're the step-parent, and it's not because you're an awful person or they don't like you. It's nothing to do with that. This is all about them. And you've got to be able to observe what they're doing as just them projecting onto you. Difficult to do. And then the next bit is very challenging too, because then the best way to cope with this is to see it for what it is, projected emotion, and not quite to feel sorry for them, but to just contain it for them and say, look, this is your stuff, not mine. This is your stuff. You're angry, you're sad, you're whatever. You don't say that to them, but that's what you're thinking. To protect yourself and know it's not about you. Because the danger is that when you get targeted with some of this projected behaviour, you react and you cause an argument or you throw a temper tantrum yourself, or you rebut it in some way, which just goes to prove that what they've just said about you could be true. So if they say something rude to you and you fire back and get really angry and use some swear words yourself, what have you just proved? You've almost proved their case, whereby they called you rude, you were rude back, and so you are rude, and it's proved their case. So you've got to try and recognise it for what it is, realise it's their problem, contain it, hold it for them, but don't accept it yourself, and choose to respond and not to react. So you aren't what they project you to be. And you can say, well, in your head, you shrug your shoulders and go, well, if you want to say that, you can say it, but it's not true, and I'm not going to respond to this in a way that you are asking for, in the way you've just said it. And I'm going to respond in a different way, which is, if that's the way you feel, so be it. But I'm going to carry on with my life and lead a good one. And your bad mood isn't going to make me go into a bad mood. I'm going to be a responder and not get caught into the triangulation of this kind of argument whereby they project and you accept. They project, you reject the projection and see it for what it is and respond in the way that you would like to, rather than in the way that you can get caught up into it. None of this is easy, but in step families, it is well worth knowing that, and it can take a while to adjust and to learn to respond. But once you begin to, it can become easier to do that. We run workshops, sessions, an email response service, and we write booklets. Look on the description box below for links to our social media and website.